And that becomes the basis of the Jewish religious calendar. Now, I thought about doing a lengthy teaching on this today, but I decided not to. Maybe you can invite me back someday and we'll do the whole teaching. But let's do an outline. What are the Jewish holidays in the Bible? Put it this way. What are God's holidays? What's the first holiday God instituted? Passover. Very good. The first one is Passover. Passover comes right as the barley begins to head out. You'd be hard-pressed to find any ripe barley at Passover, but that's what marks the beginning of the Passover month, is the heading of the barley. What's the second holiday? That's the third one. First fruits is the third one. What's in between Passover and first fruits? Unleavened bread. Unleavened bread is the holiday where you're praying for this ripening grain, and you're asking God to give you life out of the earth. Give me bread out of the earth. Don't let the grasshoppers come. Don't let the hailstorms come. It's like we used to have in our denomination a spring prayer day every year for the farmers, for the crops. It's sort of like that, except the crops are partly up already. And then the third feast is first fruit, where you bring the first barley heads. Most often you can't find any ripe ones, so you bring the first barley heads to say, God, this is all I got. If the grasshoppers come, if the hailstorm comes, I'm going to lose the rest, but I'll give you what I got. Now, what happened to Jesus on Passover? He died. What happened to Jesus on unleavened bread? He was buried. What happened to Jesus on first fruits? He was raised. Now think about that for a moment. That's, again, if you think that's a coincidence, you have a different God than I do. That's pretty amazing stuff. And only once out of 9 years do those three holidays fall 1, 2, 3 days in a row. Because Passover is always on a set day, the 14th day of the first month, Exodus. The next Sabbath is unleavened bread, and that can be a week away if Passover is on Sabbath. The Sunday after unleavened bread is first fruits. So that can be 6 days away. But once out of 8 or 9 years, they come back to back to back. So Jesus died on Passover. He's buried on the day all the Jews are praying for life out of the ground. Think about that. Every religious Jew in the world was praying, God, give us life out of the earth at the moment Jesus was being buried. And he's the one who taught, unless a grain of wheat fall into the ground and die, it cannot come back to life. Jesus died, buried, and raised. In June comes the wheat harvest, about our time of harvest, a little bit earlier. The holiday connected with the wheat harvest is unleavened bread is barley. See, this is really fascinating to me because I've learned already from this group that you're a fairly biblically literate audience. But it's real clear that we don't think culturally when we read the text. Listen to me. Forget what's up here a minute. Go back with me. What happened to the children of Israel on Passover? They left Egypt because of the blood on the door. How many days did it take them to get to Mount Sinai? 40. Okay? Try it again. What happened to the children of Israel on Passover? How many days did it take them to get to Mount Sinai? And then what did Moses do? Went up to God. What happened to Jesus on Passover? He died. 40 days later, went up on a mountain and ascended up to God. Now, if you think that's a coincidence, what happened 10 days later to the children of Israel? Pentecost. Pentecost is the wheat harvest. Shavuot in Hebrew. Shavuot means weeks, 7 weeks. Pentecost means 50 days. So Pentecost is the wheat harvest. But what else happened on Pentecost? Go back to, I'm with the Israelites now. You wouldn't know that, but I'm with the Israelites. What happened to Moses on Pentecost? With what? So the Ten Commandments come on Pentecost. Now, why would God give the Ten Commandments on the wheat harvest holiday? Well, you know this. Your rabbi taught you. Because man shall not live by bread alone. So on the holiday of bread, I'm going to give you Torah. Because you shall not live by bread alone. Now think about that. Same day, the wheat harvest. Now when Moses came down with the law, Torah, what did he find? Golden calf. So what did he do? Well, he went back up. But before he went back up, he punished them. They ground up the tablets, put it in the golden calf, put it in the water. Then he sent the Levites out to execute the leadership that had led the Israelites into this horrible thing. How many people were executed? 3,000. Now come with me. What happens to Jesus on Passover? He died. 40 days later, ascended to heaven. 10 days later, Pentecost. What comes down? And how many people believe? Now tell me God isn't cool. I mean, that was 1,300 years earlier when that was arranged. Not only that, but now go with me. The Holy Spirit comes down. 3,000 people believe. What are those 3,000 people? Picture. The harvest. The fields are golden to the harvest, Jesus said. So what day does the harvest of people begin? On the day that celebrates the harvest. Now, if you want to see another cool thing, who is the harvest? We are ordinary people. And what grain? Now, wheat is the rich man's grain. It's not as hardy as barley, but it makes much better bread because it's not so gritty. Who's the rich man's grain? We are. Who's the barley? The poor man's bread. Come on, who was raised on the barley harvest? Who died on the barley harvest? Jesus. He's the poor man's bread. You and I get to be, it's unbelievable. It's backwards of what I would expect. But those 3,000 people are pretty amazing. What is Rosh Hashanah? Rosh Hashanah is the day that the trumpet blows to announce that the judgment is coming. So what's next? Second coming. What day will it be? I don't know. And then Yom Kippur is the judgment day. The day God decides whose name goes in the book of life, according to the book of Exodus. So I argue that at very least the church ought to be remembering Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah because those two events haven't yet been finalized. Even if you argue we don't have to do Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, and Shavuot because they were fulfilled in Jesus' work. I think we should hold them yet to celebrate what he did, but that's another story. The seventh feast is Sukkot. Now, Sukkot comes in the fall. There's a fall harvest of the Gan. You should know that. The Gan harvest is in the fall. Grapes and olives, figs go all year, from early to late. So you can find figs in March, you can find figs in October, depending on the kind of fig. Not many in March and not many in October, but grapes and olives are harvested in the fall. So there is a fall festival connected with grapes and harvest, the grapes and olives, called Sukkot. That happens usually late September, early October. This year I was in Israel on October 10, and it was the end of Sukkot. By the way, every time I do that, it's like, oh man, take my watch off. I had a guy come up to me. I did a seminar in Hickory, and he came up to me at the first break and said, "I want your watch." So I gave him my watch. So I went the rest of the day. I had no idea what time it was. No, but I do want to honor the people who are preparing lunch. It's not fair to them either. At Sukkot, I don't have time for this, so I'm going to skip it. Let me go back to Passover a minute. I know I seem disorganized. That's because I'm very disorganized. Let me go back to Pentecost, okay? In the description of Pentecost, in Leviticus 23, there's a paragraph. You look it up. And the paragraph talks about what to do on Pentecost. A whole bunch of stuff. And then there's a sentence that clearly the translators didn't know where to put it because it doesn't seem to fit. The sentence says, "Don't cut the corners of your field, leave them for the poor." Remember that sentence? Now, when you had fields like this one, you would leave the corners uncut for the poor. Now, a couple quick comments about that. One, that was their welfare system. And it was not a disgrace to be poor and going to cut the corners of the field. Because the reason this guy has a field and you don't is because God has blessed him and chosen not to give you the same blessing. There's no disgrace in that. So you've had a bad year. He's had a good year. Is that his fault? No. God blesses him and not him this year. So you go with dignity, but you got to do the work. There's no handouts. You've got to go and harvest the grain. But what I like about it is everybody in the world knew how generous you were. So I'm walking with my grandson, and my grandson says, "Grandpa, look at this little corner. It's about 6 inches square. This guy left only 6 inches. How come his corner is so little?" He's not very generous. "Grandpa, look at this corner. It's huge. It's a third of the field. How come this family left their..." They're very generous. And your generosity toward the poor was very public. Jesus says when you give your gifts, don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing. And he's teaching, don't make a show of it. But generosity was a very public thing. Now, why would the command, "Don't cut the corners of your field," be given in connection with Pentecost? Well, that's the harvest. But the rabbi said, why did God want that? And the answer was, you go to Pentecost to thank God for the harvest. It would be blasphemy to say, "God, thank you so much for all of this, and I don't have any for her, and she needs some." What kind of blasphemy is that? If you went to church on Thanksgiving to thank God for everything he gave you, and on the way home there's a homeless person, and you didn't have anything for him or her, what kind of blasphemy is it to say thank you to God and have nothing to share? The rabbi said God wouldn't accept one word of thank you if that was your attitude. So the proof that you're thankful to God is that you have some for those who don't have any. Now, my rabbi friends tell me if the Pentecost story in Acts 2 is built on the biblical Pentecost, if it's rooted in the Jewish Pentecost, what is the proof that it's a real, authentic Pentecost? You care for the poor. Now go to Acts 2. How does the story end? "And the believers had all things in common and gave to each as he had a need." Isn't that interesting? How the Acts 2 story ends with uncut corners. People debate, what are the gifts of the Spirit? What is the fruit of the Spirit? We can talk all about love, joy, peace, patience, prophecy, and tongues. That first mark of being possessed by the Spirit is generosity for the poor. And I don't care how many tongues you speak in, or how many prophecies you make, or how many fruit you have. If you or I have no concern for the poor, I would argue that's not a fulfilled Pentecost. Anyway, so Sukkot then comes in the fall after Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and that's the fall holiday. Now, we've got to move on because I do want to get to Christmas by lunch.